You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin. The night didn't start with a fight. It didn't even start with Milo showing up like he always does. It started with one text. We were already seated at the restaurant, and Clara was looking at her phone more than she was looking at me. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was work, maybe her mom, maybe anything but him. Then I saw her smile at the screen. Not a normal smile, but that soft, slow grin she never gives me anymore. "Who's that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Oh, it's just Milo," she said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. She didn't even look up. "He's in the area, and I told him to stop by." I felt my stomach drop. "Wait, what? You invited him?" "Yeah, why not? He's been having a rough week. It'll cheer him up." Cheer him up. During our date. I didn't even have time to process before Milo walked in, all grins and confidence, like this was his night. He sat down next to Clara, not across from her, not even asking, just sliding into the seat like he belonged there. And Clara, she just scooted closer to him without hesitation. For the next 20 minutes, I might as well have been invisible. They were laughing, touching each other's arms, sharing old stories that made me feel like an intruder in my own relationship. Every time I tried to say something, Milo would interrupt with some charming anecdote about the good old days, and Clara would look at him like he'd hung the moon. Then it happened. The moment I realized I wasn't just irritated, I was being disrespected. Milo leaned over to show her a funny picture on his phone, and she leaned so close their heads were practically touching. I wasn't sure if I wanted to scream or just walk out. When the waiter came to take dessert orders, Milo looked at Clara and said, "Come on, you have to get the tiramisu. You always loved it. You always loved it." He said it like I wasn't even there, like he knew her better than I ever could. On the drive home, I said it. I told Clara exactly how I felt. And instead of understanding, she looked at me like I was the problem. "Edwin, you were so cold to Milo. You need to apologize to him." I pulled over, turned to her, and said something I never thought I'd say. "If you want me to apologize to him for ruining our night, then maybe you should decide who you're actually with. Him or me." The car ride after I said those words was suffocatingly quiet. I could hear the hum of the engine, the faint buzz of a streetlight when we stopped at a red light, even her breathing. She didn't yell, didn't cry. She just stared out the window like she was weighing every single option in her head. That silence hit harder than any screaming match could have. For a second, I thought she was going to open the door and just walk away right there on the side of the road. Then, without looking at me, she said, "You don't get it, do you?" Her voice was calm, almost too calm, which made it worse. "Milo has been there for me since before you ever showed up. He's not just a friend, he's the person I tell everything to. If you think I'm going to cut him out because you feel threatened, maybe we're not on the same page." It felt like a punch to the gut. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream that this wasn't about being threatened. It was about boundaries, about respect, about not having another guy hijack our time together, like I was just optional. But the way she said it, like I was just another name in her story and Milo was the main character, made me feel small, like I didn't even have the right to be upset. I tried to explain, but the words came out messy. "I'm not telling you to cut him out, Clara, but can't you see how it feels when every time we're together, he's there? Tonight was supposed to be ours." Instead, I felt like I was sitting on the sidelines watching my girlfriend and her best friend flirt in front of me. She whipped her head toward me so fast I thought she'd snap her neck. "Flirt? Are you serious right now? That's just Milo. He's like that with everyone. Stop reading into things that aren't there." But I saw the way she laughed at his jokes, the way her body leaned toward him, like he had some invisible gravity pulling her in. And maybe I'm paranoid, maybe I'm the insecure guy I never wanted to be, but deep down, something about this didn't feel innocent anymore. When we got home, she stormed into the apartment, grabbed her phone, and went straight to the balcony. I could hear her voice, soft and low, talking to Milo, probably telling him all about how I overreacted and how I owe him an apology. I sat there on the couch, staring at the door, feeling like a guest in my own life. I wanted to walk out, but I couldn't. I just sat there, waiting for her to come back inside, waiting for something, anything, that would tell me I wasn't losing her. When she finally came back in, her face was unreadable. She tossed her phone on the table and said, "Milo thinks you're just jealous, and honestly, maybe you are. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. That's when I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. Angry that she couldn't see how humiliating this was for me. Angry that I was always the one bending, apologizing, trying to be the chill boyfriend, while she made me feel like I was competing for her attention with someone she swore was just a friend. So I told her, with a voice I barely recognized, if you can't see why this is wrong, then maybe you need to figure out what you actually want. Because I can't do this anymore, being the guy who waits around while you and Milo play house. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. And for the first time, I think she realized I wasn't bluffing. Clara didn't cry, didn't argue, didn't even try to soften the blow. She just crossed her arms and stared at me like she was analyzing every weak spot I had. "You're giving me an ultimatum?" she finally said, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "Because if that's what this is, Edwin, maybe you're right. Maybe you're not the guy I thought you were." The words hit me like ice water. I wasn't even sure what she meant by that. Not the guy she thought I was? What kind of guy did she think I was? The quiet pushover who just nodded while her best friend slid into every corner of our lives. I tried to steady my voice, but it came out shaky. "I'm not giving you an ultimatum, Clara. I'm asking you to respect me. There's a difference." She just shook her head, like I was speaking a language she didn't understand. Then, as if the conversation wasn't soul-crushing enough, her phone buzzed. She didn't hesitate, just picked it up and answered, smiling. "Hey, Milo," she said, her voice suddenly soft and warm, the way it hadn't been with me all night. I just stood there, frozen, listening to her tell him, "Yeah, I'll come by later. I need to clear my head." I swear my heart stopped. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. "You're going to him tonight?" I asked, my voice breaking in a way that made me hate myself. I sounded like a kid begging not to be left alone, and maybe that's exactly how I felt. Clara didn't even look guilty. "Edwin, I can't talk to you when you're like this. Milo understands me. He actually listens instead of turning everything into drama." I wanted to laugh, but nothing about this was funny. "Drama? I asked you for one night without him. And your response is to run to him?" My chest felt tight, like my own voice was strangling me. I wasn't even sure what I was saying anymore. All I knew was that I felt like I was watching my relationship burn to the ground, while she stood there holding the matches. She looked at me for a long time, her expression unreadable, and then said the words that made me want to sink into the floor. "Maybe you should take some time to think about what you really want too. Because right now, I don't know if I can keep doing this with you." And just like that, she grabbed her keys, slipped on her jacket, and left. The door slammed, and the silence that followed felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. I sat on the couch staring at the spot where she'd just been, my mind spinning with images of her sitting with Milo, laughing, maybe leaning against him like she did earlier. Every part of me wanted to text her, call her, do anything to pull her back. But another part of me, the part that was finally waking up, knew that if I chased her now, I'd be chasing her forever. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe an hour, maybe 3. The clock on the wall ticked like it was mocking me. At one point, I found myself staring at her half-full glass of wine on the table, thinking about how even that stupid drink got to spend more time with her tonight than I did. And that's when I realized something had shifted tonight, something I couldn't take back. It was 2:17 a.m. when I heard the key turn in the lock. I had been sitting in the dark for hours, not because I wanted to look dramatic, but because I didn't want to face the reflection of myself in the TV screen anymore. Every time I looked at that faint mirror image, I saw a man who had been slowly disappearing for months. A man who loved a woman who might have already chosen someone else. When Clara stepped inside, the hallway light from outside carved her silhouette against the doorway. I didn't even say a word. She looked startled, like she wasn't expecting me to still be awake. Her hair was a little messy, her jacket half-zipped, and there was something on her face, an expression I couldn't read, guilt or just exhaustion. She closed the door quietly as if I was the one she needed to tiptoe around. "You're still up," she said softly, almost as if she was testing the air. I didn't respond right away. I just watched her kick off her shoes and avoid looking at me. It was like watching a stranger move through my apartment. I finally said, "Where were you?" My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated how weak I sounded. I wanted to sound firm, strong, but I felt like a kid begging for answers from someone who didn't care enough to give them. Clara sighed and tossed her keys on the counter. "I told you, I needed to clear my head. Milo..." She stopped mid-sentence like she realized that saying his name out loud was pouring gasoline on a fire. He's just someone I can talk to when I feel like this. You were so angry tonight. I couldn't breathe around you. I stood up, and my chair scraped against the floor, loud and sharp. Angry? Clara, I sat there like an idiot while he took over our date. I barely said a word. But I'm the problem because I didn't smile and clap for your little inside jokes? My voice rose without me meaning to, but the anger in my chest was too heavy to hold back anymore. She didn't argue, which scared me more than any shouting could have. Instead, she walked to the kitchen, grabbed a glass, and filled it with water. Her hands were trembling slightly, and I noticed. I notice everything about her, even when she doesn't want me to. When she turned around, she finally looked at me, and that's when I saw it, something in her eyes that made my stomach twist. She wasn't just tired, she was conflicted, torn, like she'd been keeping something from me all along. Edwin, she said slowly, almost like she was trying to prepare me for bad news. You and I, we've been drifting. And Milo, she stopped again, but this time it felt deliberate, like she was fighting with herself. He just understands me in ways you don't. It's not what you think, but sometimes I wonder if we're even right for each other anymore. That sentence shattered something inside me. It was like she had taken all the quiet fears I'd been swallowing and said them out loud with perfect clarity. Not what I think, I asked, my voice low now, trembling. You spend more time with him than me. He crashes our date. You run to him when we fight. And you're telling me I'm imagining things? She looked away and I knew there was more she wasn't saying. Clara went to take a shower, leaving her phone on the coffee table. I sat there, my thoughts spinning so fast I could barely breathe. Every sound in the apartment felt amplified. The distant hum of the fridge, the water running in the bathroom, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I stared at her phone like it was some sort of ticking bomb. I'm not proud of what I did next, but my hands moved before my brain could stop them. I unlocked it. I know it's a violation of trust. I know it's not the right thing to do, but I couldn't stand sitting there, blind to what was happening right under my nose. The first thing I saw was a text from Milo. It wasn't just casual chatter. It wasn't even remotely innocent. I hope you're okay. I hate seeing you like this. I can't stop thinking about tonight. My stomach dropped. I scrolled up, my fingers shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. There were messages from earlier that evening. While I was sitting across from her at dinner, she had been texting him. He's being moody again, she wrote to Milo. Wish you were here instead. Wish you were here instead. I read that line over and over, the words burning into my brain. I could feel my face heating up, my jaw tightening, but I couldn't stop reading. Milo had sent her a photo, a selfie from the bar, smiling like the smug bastard he is. You know I'm always here for you, he wrote. You deserve to be happy. You deserve someone who gets you. Someone who gets you. Was he talking about himself? Was she letting him talk about me like that? By the time Clara came out of the shower, my hands were trembling so violently I almost dropped her phone. I put it down, face down on the table, and tried to act like nothing had happened. But I must have looked pale, like I'd seen a ghost, because she immediately stopped drying her hair and looked at me. What's wrong with you? She asked, her tone already sharp, defensive. Nothing, I said, but the words sounded fake, even to me. Just tired. She narrowed her eyes, like she could smell the tension coming off me. Did you look at my phone? The silence that followed was worse than any lie I could have told. I didn't answer, and that was enough for her to know. Her jaw tightened, and she crossed her arms. Wow. So now you're spying on me? I stood up, unable to sit anymore. Clara, what the hell am I supposed to think when I read you telling him you wish he was there instead of me? What am I supposed to do when he's texting you things like that? My voice cracked halfway through, and I hated how desperate I sounded, but I couldn't help it. She froze for a second, clearly realizing I'd seen the messages, but then she went on the offensive. You had no right to go through my phone, Edwin. None. You think that's okay? You think that makes you the good guy here? I'm not trying to be the good guy, I said, my voice shaking. I'm trying to figure out if my girlfriend even wants to be with me anymore, or if I'm just the placeholder while you and Milo... I stopped because saying it out loud made me want to throw up. She didn't deny it, not once. She just looked away and muttered, "You're paranoid." But the way her voice wavered told me there was something she wasn't saying, something I wasn't ready to hear. The argument that followed was unlike any fight we had ever had. It wasn't just anger. It wasn't just frustration. It was raw, unfiltered chaos. Clara kept insisting that I was overreacting and that Milo is just a friend. But every time she said his name, I could feel something in me crack a little more. I wasn't even sure if I was angry at her, at him, or at myself for letting things get to this point. I told her that I had read enough messages to know this wasn't just some harmless friendship anymore, but she brushed it off with a coldness that terrified me. It wasn't guilt I saw in her eyes, it was annoyance, like I was an obstacle to something she wasn't ready to admit. "Do you even hear yourself?" I asked, pacing across the living room like a caged animal. "You're defending him like he's your boyfriend, Clara. I've never seen you stand up for me the way you stand up for him. You text him in the middle of our date, you run to him when we argue, and now I'm supposed to feel bad for checking your phone? Are you kidding me?" She stood there, arms crossed, looking like she wanted to be anywhere but here. "I'm defending him because you're making this a bigger deal than it is. Milo has always been there for me. Always. He doesn't make me feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells. He listens. He doesn't twist things." Her words were sharp, but there was something behind them, something she wasn't saying outright. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "What does that mean? He listens? He doesn't twist things? What exactly are you saying here, Clara? That I'm the problem? That I'm not enough?" She opened her mouth, but the hesitation on her face gave her away. It was that hesitation that made me feel like I was standing on a cliff, just waiting for the ground to crumble. "Edwin," she said finally, "I don't know what I want anymore. You and we've been going through the motions for a while now. Maybe I've just felt closer to Milo because he's easy to talk to. That's all." I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes out when you're trying not to scream. "Closer to him? Clara, you told him you wished he was with you instead of me. Do you even realize what that means? Do you have any idea what that feels like?" My voice cracked, and I hated how vulnerable I sounded, but I couldn't stop myself. I was unraveling right there in front of her. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look guilty. Instead, she whispered, almost too quietly for me to hear, "Maybe you should go stay somewhere else for a while. We both need space." It felt like someone had punched me straight in the chest. I stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. Space? Was this her way of softening the blow? Was she already halfway out the door with Milo waiting in the wings? I wanted to ask her, wanted to scream, but I couldn't find the words. I just stood there, feeling like the walls of our apartment were closing in on me. Finally, I grabbed my jacket and keys. I didn't even pack a bag. I just needed to get out before I said something I couldn't take back. As I closed the door behind me, I heard her phone buzz again. I didn't need to guess who it was. The thought of her smiling at another message from him while I was out here breaking apart made my hands shake. That night, I didn't go to a hotel or to a friend's place. I just drove. Miles and miles of empty roads, my phone buzzing with her missed calls, my mind stuck on one loop. What if I've already lost her? What if I was never really hers to begin with? I barely slept that night. I ended up parked in an empty grocery store lot, staring at the dashboard clock as if it could tell me what to do. The sky turned from pitch black to that dull pre-dawn gray, and I was still sitting there with my mind running in circles. Every memory of Clara and Milo twisted itself into something ugly in my head. Every time she laughed at his jokes, every quick coffee meetup she brushed off as harmless, every text message I had pretended not to notice. It was like I was finally connecting all the dots that I had refused to see before. At some point around 7 a.m., I decided I needed answers. Not from Clara, she'd just spin things to make me look paranoid, but from Milo himself. I don't even know what I was thinking. Maybe I just wanted to see his face when I asked him directly if he was in love with my girlfriend. Maybe I wanted him to feel a fraction of the humiliation I'd been drowning in. Either way, I drove straight to his apartment, a place I had only been to once before when he hosted some awkward game night that felt more like an excuse to show off how close he and Clara were. His car was in the driveway. My chest tightened as I walked up the steps, every nerve in my body screaming at me to turn around, but I didn't. I knocked on his door. Nothing. I knocked again, harder. Finally, I heard shuffling inside, and the door cracked open just enough for him to peer through, his hair a mess and his face half asleep. "Edwin?" His voice had that fake surprise tone, like he wasn't expecting me. "What are you doing here? I need to talk to you," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "About Clara." He opened the door wider, leaning against the frame with that smug, lazy smile I'd grown to hate. Look, man, I don't know what she told you, but you've got it all wrong. She's just my friend. Relax. I took a step closer. Don't lie to me. I saw the texts. I wish you were here instead. You think I'm just going to shrug that off? For a second, his expression flickered. Just a split second, but I caught it. He smirked again, but this time it felt calculated. You're really going to blame me because your relationship is falling apart? Maybe if you treated her the way she deserves, she wouldn't need me to pick up the slack. The words hit me like a fist to the gut. My hands clenched at my sides, and I had to force myself not to lunge at him. You think you're some hero? You're the reason she's pulling away. He tilted his head, studying me like I was some pathetic joke. You know what your problem is, Edwin? You're too easy to ignore. You're not the guy she tells her secrets to. You're just comfortable, boring. She needs someone who makes her feel alive. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. I stepped back, shaking with a mix of rage and fear. Fear that he wasn't lying, that maybe Clara really did see him as the spark I wasn't. I turned to leave, but as I walked away I heard him mutter, "If you can't handle her, someone else will." That line followed me like a curse all the way back to the car. I slammed the door shut and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, my whole body trembling. It wasn't just Milo anymore. It was Clara's silence, her hesitation, her lack of denial. It was everything. By the time I got back to the apartment, Clara was gone. Her jacket, her shoes, even the mug she'd left on the table the night before, gone. There was only a note scribbled on a piece of paper. I need time to think. Don't call me. I stared at it, my hands shaking, feeling like my entire world had just tilted off its axis. She wasn't just mad. She wasn't just running to Milo for advice. She was gone. And for the first time, I realized I might not get her back. The apartment felt hollow without her. The silence wasn't just silence anymore. It was a living, breathing reminder that I'd been replaced in her life long before she walked out the door. I spent that entire day pacing around, replaying everything she'd ever said about Milo. Every time I'd swallowed my discomfort just to keep the peace. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I had been fighting for someone who wasn't even fighting for me. That realization hurt like hell, but it also gave me something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. That evening, Clara called. I almost didn't pick up. My first instinct was to let it ring, to let her wonder how it felt to be the one waiting. But I answered, not out of weakness, but because I wanted to hear what she had to say now that I was finally done begging for scraps of her attention. Her voice was soft, almost nervous. "Edwin, I think I made a mistake," she said. "I just needed space, but being away from you, I realize Milo isn't what I thought. He doesn't get me like you do. I think I've been using him as a distraction. A part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her it was too late, that she'd crossed lines she couldn't uncross. But another part of me, maybe the smarter part, knew I had to keep calm for my own sake. "Clara," I said, my voice steady, "you've made me feel invisible for months. I can't keep being the guy you come back to when you're done playing with someone else's attention. I need someone who chooses me every day, not just when she's lonely." There was silence on the line, and then I heard her sniffle. "I do choose you, Edwin. I just lost my way. Can we fix this? Can we start over?" I closed my eyes and thought about everything. Her laughter with Milo, the texts, the way I'd been treated like an afterthought. And for once I didn't feel desperate for her to stay. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe I need time too. Maybe I need to figure out who I am without feeling like I'm constantly in competition." That night, I packed a bag and stayed with an old friend. The first morning I woke up without the weight of Clara's drama, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. It was like I could finally breathe. Over the next few weeks, I started focusing on myself. I picked up my guitar again, started running in the mornings, and even reconnected with people I'd lost touch with because I'd been so wrapped up in keeping Clara happy. Clara texted me a few times, and while I didn't hate her, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done being the guy who begged to be chosen. Maybe we'll talk again one day, maybe not. But for the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm defined by whether or not someone loves me. I'm starting to love myself again, and it feels good. Better than I thought it would. And here's the crazy part. A few days ago, I went to grab coffee at this small place near the park, and the barista, A girl with bright green eyes and the kind of smile that feels like spring struck up a conversation with me. We ended up sitting outside for an hour just talking. I don't know if it's anything, but it reminded me that there's a world out there beyond Clara and Milo, a better world, one where I'm not invisible.